Before we dive in, viewer discretion is advised. This content is for entertainment. What happens when Hollywood sweetheart, a woman known for radiating warmth, professionalism, and unshakable grace, finds herself cornered on live television by one of daytime's most caustic personalities, prodded and needled until something inside her finally snaps? What unfolds isn't just another celebrity interview gone awry. It's a reckoning. It's the moment when years of maintaining composure in the face of industry cruelty collide with one insult too many. When kindness draws a line in the sand and refuses to be confused with weakness. And when millions of viewers watch in real time as America's sweetheart reminds everyone that grace doesn't mean silence and compassion doesn't mean doormat. This is the story of how Jennifer Garner walked onto the View set to promote a film about resilience. Faced Joy Behar's escalating provocations with patience and poise, and then delivered a response so devastatingly perfect that it left Joy speechless, the studio in stunned silence, and the internet ablaze with a phrase that would become an instant cultural phenomenon. You hit a mirror. Before we dive into the complete destruction that followed, understand what you're witnessing. This isn't just about one actress standing up to one talk show host. This is about the fundamental tension between authenticity and cynicism in entertainment. The moment when someone who'd spent decades being called too nice proved that kindness armed with truth is the most powerful weapon of all. And the shocking reality that maintaining dignity in Hollywood is somehow treated as naive rather than admirable. The confrontation between Jennifer Garner and Joy Behar became a viral sensation not because of shouting or theatrics, but because it crystallized something millions of people felt watching celebrities get torn apart for sport on daytime television. Enough. What you're about to read is the anatomy of grace weaponized, dignity transformed into devastation, and why watching Joy Behar get intellectually eviscerated by someone she'd underestimated became one of the most satisfying moments in talk show history. The morning Jennifer Garner arrived at the View studio, the setup seemed routine, almost mundane. She was there to promote her new film, a heartfelt drama about motherhood, resilience, overcoming tragedy, the kind of role that had become her trademark over a career spanning 3 decades. The promotional circuit, the talk show rounds, the carefully orchestrated appearances designed to generate buzz and ticket sales. This was Hollywood business as usual. A dance Jennifer had performed hundreds of times with practiced grace. The View stage was familiar territory. The semicircular table, the colorful backdrop, the studio audience already buzzing with anticipation of seeing Jennifer Garner in person. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, Sarah Haynes. The full panel assembled, cameras positioned, producers calling out final instructions before going live. Everything proceeding exactly as scheduled, professionally managed, seemingly without drama. But something in the air felt different that morning, charged with an invisible tension that rippled through the studio before anyone had spoken a word. Perhaps it was the way Joy Behar kept glancing at her notes. That familiar smirk playing at the corners of her mouth, suggesting she had something planned, some angle she was preparing to exploit. Perhaps it was the nervous energy from producers who'd seen Joy in this mood before and knew where it tended to lead. Or perhaps it was simply that inevitable moment when someone who'd spent years being mocked for being too nice was about to reach a breaking point that no one saw coming. The cameras began rolling. The audience settled. Whoopi delivered the introduction with her characteristic professionalism, welcoming Jennifer with genuine warmth and congratulating her on the new film. The opening minutes flowed smoothly. Questions about the movie's themes, about working with the director, about what drew Jennifer to this particular role. Standard promotional fare delivered with mutual respect and professional courtesy. Jennifer answered each question thoughtfully, her famous warmth radiating through the television screens, that genuine quality that had made her beloved across generations. She discussed the film's exploration of maternal strength, the ways women rebuild themselves after devastating loss, the universal themes of resilience that transcended the specific story being told. It was everything a good promotional interview should be: substantive without being heavy, personal without being invasive, entertaining without sacrificing depth. But Joy Behar had other plans. She'd been waiting, biding her time, preparing her angle. And now, with Jennifer relaxed and the conversation flowing naturally, Joy decided to strike. Jennifer, Joy began, leaning forward with that smirk that regular viewers recognized instantly. You're always playing these wholesome women, moms, caretakers, angels on earth. Don't you ever get tired of being nice all the time? The question landed like a barb disguised as curiosity, carrying an edge of condescension that everyone in the studio could feel. The audience offered a small, uncertain laugh. The kind of nervous response that comes from sensing something uncomfortable brewing but not quite knowing where it will lead. Jennifer smiled politely, her trained Hollywood grace masking the flicker of recognition in her eyes that this wasn't going to be a normal interview. Well, she said lightly, maintaining her composure, I like playing roles that reflect real people. I think there's strength in kindness. It was a perfectly measured response, diplomatic without being defensive, standing her ground while refusing to take the bait. But Joy wasn't finished. She was just getting started. Sure, Joy interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. But do you ever worry you're not being taken seriously because of it? I mean, people still call you America's mom. Doesn't that get under your skin? There it was. The shift from needling to something more pointed, from playful provocation to genuine challenge. The co-hosts exchanged glances. Whoopi leaned back slightly, her body language cautious, sensing this could escalate. Sunny host tapped her note cards nervously. Sarah Haynes gave a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. Uncomfortable with where this was heading, Jennifer's posture straightened almost imperceptibly. I don't think compassion is weakness. Joy, she said, her voice still measured but carrying more steel now. Something we could use more of, especially these days. It was a subtle rebuke, a gentle correction that maintained the high road while refusing to accept Joy's premise that kindness equaled weakness or that being called America's mom was somehow insulting. But Joy, either not reading the room or not caring, pushed harder. Oh, please. Joy chuckled, her voice dripping with theatrical irony. Compassion is nice, but it won't get you Oscars. Look at the industry. You've been around long enough. You know, nice doesn't sell. The audience's laughter came uncertain, wavering, confused. The sound didn't land right. They could sense something shifting. Could feel Jennifer's patience being tested. Could recognize this had crossed from interview into something else entirely. For a heartbeat, Jennifer's expression didn't change. Then something in her eyes, something raw, something that had been held in check for years, surfaced. She leaned forward slightly, her voice lower, steadier, carrying the weight of truth spoken with controlled intensity. Maybe that's why the world's so cynical. Joy, everyone's chasing applause instead of peace. The words landed like a thunderclap. The audience murmured, recognizing they just witnessed something significant. Joy blinked, visibly taken back by the firmness in Jennifer Unk's tone, by the subtle shift from gracious guest to someone standing her ground. Whoopi attempted to intervene, her mediator instincts kicking in. Okay, ladies, she said with a forced smile. Let's not start World War II before the commercial break. But the tension wouldn't settle. It hung in the air like smoke, thick and unavoidable. And Joy, rather than backing down or changing subjects, decided to escalate. No, I just think it's interesting, Joy continued, pressing forward with the kind of reckless confidence that comes from years of saying whatever she wants without consequences. Some people play nice for the camera but don't always live that way behind it. The words landed like a physical blow. Gasps rippled through the studio audience. The other hosts went rigid in their seats, eyes wide with the recognition that Joy had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. This wasn't provocative interviewing anymore. This was a personal attack, a suggestion that Jennifer was somehow fake, that her kindness was performance rather than character, that behind the scenes she was someone different, someone less admirable. Jennifer's jaw tightened. You could see it, the flash of disbelief across her face, the slow inhale through her nose as she steadied herself, the moment of decision about how to respond to an attack that demanded response but could so easily be handled wrong. I hope you're not suggesting something personal, Joy, Jennifer said, her voice calm but brittle, giving Joy one chance to walk it back, to clarify, to step away from the precipice. Joy smiled thinly, doubling down. I'm just saying Hollywood's full of surprises. It was no longer an interview. It was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down on live television in front of millions of viewers. And Jennifer Garner, America's sweetheart, Hollywood's nice girl, the woman who'd spent decades maintaining grace under pressure, had reached her limit. Jennifer's hand clenched subtly on the armrest. Years of media training told her to let it go, laugh it off, pivot to safer ground. Every instinct developed through decades in Hollywood screamed to maintain composure, stay diplomatic, don't give them a sound bite they can use against you. But something inside her cracked. A line had been crossed, and she was done pretending attacks on her character should be tolerated in the name of being pleasant. I've worked hard to stay true to myself, Jennifer said, her voice clear, trembling slightly, not with uncertainty, but with controlled emotion, with righteous anger channeled through dignity. If that doesn't fit your version of entertainment, that's your problem, not mine. The audience erupted in applause, unexpected, thunderous, instantaneous. The sound rolled through the studio like a wave. Viewers recognizing they just witnessed something rare and powerful. Someone standing up for themselves without losing themselves. Someone drawing a boundary without being cruel. Someone refusing to accept disrespect while maintaining the moral high ground. Whoopi's eyes widened. Sarah Haynes mouthed, "Oh my God," to the camera operator. Sonny looked down, pretending to shuffle notes, trying desperately to diffuse the heat building to explosive levels. But Joy didn't blink. She smirked, a flicker of irritation showing through her theatrical persona. "Touchy, touchy," she muttered into her microphone. The kind of dismissive comment designed to frame Jennifer as oversensitive rather than Joy as offensive. And that apparently was the last straw. Jennifer turned her head sharply, her eyes locking onto Joy with laser focus. When she spoke, every word carried the weight of years of being underestimated, dismissed, and mocked for having the audacity to be kind in an industry that mistakes cruelty for cleverness. "You know, Joy, I came here to talk about my film, not defend my character. But since you brought it up, kindness isn't an act. It's a choice, one I make every day. Even when I'm sitting across from people who confuse cruelty with honesty." The studio went absolutely silent. Not the anticipatory silence from before. This was the stunned silence of people processing something profound, recognizing they just witnessed a verbal evisceration delivered with such grace and precision that it was devastatingly effective precisely because it wasn't mean, it was true. No shuffling papers, no whispering audience members, just that dense electric stillness before something breaks, before the full impact hits, before everyone processes what just happened. Whoopi leaned forward, her voice low and urgent. "We're going to go to break," she said quickly, waving frantically to producers off stage, desperately trying to cut away before this escalated further. But Jennifer wasn't finished. She'd held her tongue for years, maintained grace through countless interviews where hosts took cheap shots at her kindness, stayed professional when others would have lashed out. Now, having been pushed too far, she was going to speak her complete truth. Her voice softened, but every word hit like thunder rolling across the studio. "We don't need more cynics in this world, Joy. We need people who still believe in decency." Applause swelled again, even louder this time, rolling through the audience like a wave of vindication. Some people stood, others just stared, stunned by what they were witnessing. This wasn't a celebrity meltdown or an emotional outburst. This was moral clarity expressed with devastating effectiveness. Joy forced a laugh, trying desperately to regain control of a situation that had completely escaped her. "Well, looks like I hit a nerve." And then Jennifer delivered the line that would become an instant cultural phenomenon. The phrase that would be shared millions of times across every social media platform. The perfect encapsulation of this entire confrontation in 3 words. Jennifer tilted her head, her eyes steady, her voice quiet, but carrying to every corner of that studio. "No, you hit a mirror." Audible, genuine gasp. The kind of reaction that comes from witnessing something so perfectly calibrated, so devastatingly clever, so morally superior, while simultaneously being absolutely savage that it leaves no possible response. The producers' voices crackled through earpieces. "Cut to commercial now." Whoopi's voice carried over the rising chatter. "We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere." As the music swelled and cameras faded to black, the energy on that set was nuclear. Jennifer exhaled slowly, shaking her head slightly. Her hands trembling just enough to betray the adrenaline coursing through her system despite the calm she was desperately maintaining. Joy looked away, her smile fading for the first time, the reality sinking in that she'd just been intellectually destroyed on her own show by someone she'd drastically underestimated. The audience whispered among themselves, phones already coming out, tweets already being typed, the viral moment already beginning its journey across the internet at light speed. When the show returned from commercial break, the studio felt like a completely different place. The warm, friendly atmosphere that had characterized the opening minutes had evaporated, replaced by something tense, electric, almost dangerous. The audience sat differently now, leaning forward, hyper-alert, sensing they were witnessing something significant, something that would be talked about long after the credits rolled. Whoopi's voice carried through the speakers, cheerful but cautious, the forced brightness of someone trying to reset a conversation that had gone completely off the rails. "Welcome back to The View. We're here with the wonderful Jennifer Garner, who's been sharing her insights about her new film and a few other things too." She laughed lightly, the sound hollow, trying desperately to recapture normally that everyone knew was gone forever. Jennifer turned toward Whoopi, her expression softening slightly, appreciating the attempted rescue. "Thank you, Whoopi," she said, her voice carrying genuine gratitude for the lifeline being thrown. "I really appreciate the conversation." The emphasis on the last word was subtle but unmistakable. This had ceased being a conversation the moment Joy decided to make it personal. Joy crossed her legs and leaned in, that smirk returning to her face like a mask being repositioned. The brief moment of uncertainty during the commercial break had apparently passed, replaced by defiant confidence, or perhaps just desperate bravado. "Oh, we're always having conversations here, Jennifer," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness that fooled absolutely no one. "Some people just don't like when it gets real." The audience let out a collective, "Oh," that drawn-out sound that comes from a crowd smelling drama before it fully materializes. Recognizing that Joy was doubling down rather than backing off, that the commercial break hadn't diffused anything, but had merely postponed the next exchange, Jennifer's lips parted, her expression registering something between disbelief and weary recognition that Joy wasn't going to let this go gracefully. But before she could formulate a response, Sarah Haynes jumped in with the desperation of someone throwing themselves on a conversational grenade. "So, Jennifer," Sarah said, her voice almost too bright, too rushed, "tell us about this new movie. You play a mother who's trying to rebuild her life after a tragedy, right?" It was a transparent attempt to redirect, to get back to the actual purpose of this interview, to salvage something from the wreckage. Jennifer nodded, visibly grateful for the escape route being offered. "Yes," she began, her voice settling back into professional promotional mode. "It's about rediscovering your strength when life forces you to start over. It's a story about resilience." "And resilience, huh?" Joy interrupted, unable to help herself, apparently compelled to keep poking, to keep pushing, to prove something to herself or the audience or perhaps to Jennifer. "You've had to do that in your own life, right? After, everything with Ben." The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't fully detonated yet. The audience gasped loud, genuine, shocked. This wasn't provocative interviewing anymore. This wasn't even poor taste. This was Joy bringing up Jennifer's divorce, her personal life, her private pain on live television without warning or permission. Weaponizing someone's tragedy for what? A moment. A sound bite. Ratings. Jennifer blinked. For a split second, her composure completely faltered. You could see the mask slipping, the flash of genuine hurt crossing her face before the professional armor snapped back into place. You could almost hear her breath catch, see her swallow hard, watch her fight to maintain control of emotions that Joy had deliberately tried to weaponize. Then slowly she sat back in her chair, eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in something more profound. A kind of disappointed realization about who Joy actually was beneath the comedian persona. What she was willing to do for attention. How low she was prepared to go. Whoopi's eyes widened in horror. "Joy," she started to interject, her voice carrying warning and censure. "What?" Joy said with mock innocence, her hands spreading in a gesture of false confusion. "It's a fair question. She talks about resilience in the movie." "I'm connecting it to—" "No," Jennifer interrupted, her voice quiet, but carrying the kind of authority that cuts through noise without needing volume. "No, you're not connecting anything, Joy. You're trying to hurt me on national television. And I need you to understand something." The studio went silent again. Even the camera operator seemed to freeze, sensing something important was about to be said. Something that would define not just this moment, but how both women would be remembered from this day forward. Jennifer leaned forward slightly, her eyes locked on Joy with laser intensity. "My personal life, my family, my children, those aren't your material. They're not fodder for your jokes or your attempts to seem edgy. They're my life. And yes, I've been through hard things like most people, but using someone's pain to get a reaction on your show, that says everything about you and nothing about me." The audience erupted in applause again, even louder than before. The sound rolling through the studio like vindication made audible. But Jennifer wasn't finished. She'd been holding this in for years. All the times hosts had made jokes about her relationships. All the times her kindness had been mocked. All the times being a good person had somehow been treated as weakness or naivety or something to be ridiculed. "I came here in good faith," Jennifer continued, her voice steady, despite the emotion clearly churning beneath the surface. "I came here to talk about a project I care about, to share something meaningful with your audience. And you decided instead to make it about tearing me down. Why? What does that accomplish? What does that say about what we've become as a culture that we think this kind of cruelty passes for entertainment?" Joy opened her mouth, but no words came out. For perhaps the first time in her career on The View, Joy Behar, the woman who always had a comeback, who prided herself on never being at a loss for words, sat speechless, unable to formulate a response because there was no response that didn't make her look worse than she already did. Sunny host, who'd been silent through most of this escalation, finally spoke up, her voice careful. "I think what we're all trying to know," Jennifer said gently but firmly. "I think I've said what I need to say. Joy knows what she did. Everyone watching knows what she did. And I'm choosing not to match that energy. I'm choosing to maintain my dignity even when others won't extend me the same courtesy. 'Cause that's what kindness actually means. Not being a doormat, but refusing to become cruel even when cruelty is directed at you." It was a masterclass in grace under pressure, in maintaining moral authority while calling out bad behavior, in standing up for yourself without descending to the level of your attacker. And everyone in that studio, from the hosts to the audience to the crew behind the cameras, understood they were witnessing something rare and powerful. The remainder of the segment limped along with excruciating awkwardness. Sarah Haynes asked softball questions about the film that Jennifer answered with professional courtesy. Whoopi steered far away from anything personal, keeping the conversation safely focused on plot points and production details. Sunny offered a few supportive comments, perhaps trying to distance herself from Joy's behavior. And Joy sat mostly silent, her smirk gone, her usual confidence deflated, occasionally glancing at Jennifer with an expression that might have been respect or might have been resentment, probably both. When the segment finally mercifully ended, Jennifer gathered her belongings with the same grace she'd maintained throughout. She stood, smoothed her dress, smiled at the audience, who gave her a standing ovation that lasted well beyond what producers had time for. She thanked Whoopi, nodded politely at the other hosts, and notably did not make eye contact with or speak to Joy Behar as she walked off that stage with her head held impossibly high and her dignity not just intact, but enhanced by how she'd handled an impossible situation. Outside the studio, the scene was absolute chaos. Paparazzi had somehow gotten wind of what happened inside and assembled in force. Cameras raised, voices shouting over each other, all desperate for that money shot, that perfect quote, that reaction that would drive tomorrow's headlines. Security struggled to maintain a perimeter as Jennifer emerged from the stage door, her publicist flanking her protectively, trying to create a path through the media scrum. "Jennifer, Jennifer." Voices cascaded from every direction, aggressive and insistent. Do you have a response to Joy Behar's comments? Were you offended? Will you ever return to The View? Are you and Joy Behar in a feud? Did you expect the confrontation to go viral? The questions came rapid fire, overlapping, barely distinguishable from each other in the cacophony of competing reporters all shouting to be heard. Camera flashes created a strobe effect, illuminating Jennifer's face in stark bursts of light. Her publicist kept repeating, "No comment. Excuse us." Coming through, attempting to navigate them toward the waiting car. Jennifer paused for half a second, her face illuminated by the relentless camera flashes. She could have kept walking. She could have followed her publicist's advice and maintained complete silence. She could have let the moment speak for itself without adding anything more to the narrative that was already forming. Instead, she turned slightly toward the assembled press, composed herself, and delivered one more perfectly calibrated line. Her voice calm and clear despite the chaos. Sometimes silence says everything. Then she got into her car. The door shut with a solid thunk that felt like punctuation. The crowd's noise immediately muffed, fading into distant echoes as the vehicle pulled away from the curb and disappeared into New York traffic, leaving behind a mob of journalists already furiously typing on their phones, uploading clips, crafting headlines for stories that would dominate entertainment news for days to come. Inside the now empty studio, the contrast was stark. Where minutes before there had been bright lights, camera movement, audience energy, now there was only silence broken by the mechanical hum of equipment powering down. Joy Behar sat alone at the table that suddenly felt massive without the other hosts and the guest who just left. The makeup artists and producers had scattered, giving her space or perhaps avoiding her. The hum of stage lights buzzed above her, that constant electrical drone that becomes white noise until you're sitting in near silence, and it's suddenly the only sound. Joy stared at the spot where Jennifer had been sitting, replaying the confrontation in her mind, seeing Jennifer Uncke's face when that divorce comment landed, hearing her own voice saying things she now wished she could take back, watching the whole situation spiral from provocation into something she hadn't anticipated and couldn't control. For the first time in years, maybe decades, Joy Behar looked unsure of herself. Not just rattled, but genuinely shaken, perhaps even haunted by the realization that she'd severely misjudged her opponent. That she'd attacked someone who turned out to be far stronger than she'd anticipated. That she'd crossed a line and the person on the other side hadn't just absorbed it, but had reflected it back in a way that made Joy look small and mean. Her phone sitting on the table was already lighting up with notifications, text messages from friends and colleagues, alerts from social media showing she was trending, but not in a good way. Email from network executives requesting urgent calls. The digital record of consequences arriving in real time. By dawn the next morning, the world was already ablaze with the story. Every entertainment network, every gossip site, every social media platform was replaying the same clips. Jennifer's calm devastation with you hit a mirror. The audience's shocked gasps. Joy's speechless reaction. The 10-second moment had been sliced, analyzed, GIF, meme-med, and disseminated to every corner of the internet at viral velocity. Good Morning America led with it. Entertainment Tonight made it their opening story. TMZ had frame-by-frame analysis. Late-night hosts were already writing jokes about it for their monologues. The View's own social media team found themselves in crisis mode, trying to manage a comment section that had turned overwhelmingly against Joy and in favor of Jennifer. The hashtags multiplied and evolved throughout the morning. Number You Hit a Mirror dominated Twitter's trending topics, reaching number 1 and staying there for 36 hours straight. Number Team Jennifer and Number Respect Jennifer trended alongside it. More critical tags like Number Joy Behar Apologize and Number The View Toxic gained momentum as the story spread beyond entertainment circles into broader cultural conversations about civility, respect, and what kind of behavior should be acceptable on television. Clips flooded every platform: TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, Twitter videos. Each platform's algorithm recognized engagement and pushed the content harder, creating a snowball effect that turned a daytime talk show exchange into a genuine cultural moment. Commentators and reaction channels dissected every expression, every pause, every word choice, analyzing the confrontation with the intensity usually reserved for political debates or sports playoffs. The contrast between Jennifer's quiet strength and Joy's aggressive provocation had divided audiences into passionate camps overnight. Comment sections became battlegrounds where people argued not just about what happened, but about what it meant, about kindness versus cynicism, about grace under pressure versus entertainment through cruelty, about whether Joy had been doing her job or crossing a line. Jennifer Garner just reminded everyone that being kind doesn't mean being weak. One viral tweet with 400,000 likes declared, "You can stand up for yourself with dignity and grace. That's real strength." Another perspective gained traction. Joy Behar represents everything wrong with entertainment media, attacking people personally and calling it getting real. Jennifer exposed that perfectly. Even some of Joy's usual defenders found themselves struggling to justify what had happened. I normally love Joy's directness, but bringing up someone's divorce unprompted, that wasn't tough questions, that was just mean. Read one comment with thousands of agreements. The think pieces started appearing within hours, each outlet rushing to contextualize the moment within broader cultural frameworks. Variety published Jennifer Garner's viral confrontation exposes The View's problem with respect. The Hollywood Reporter went with When Grace Fights Back, how Jennifer Garner changed the conversation about kindness. Vox contributed The cultural significance of You Hit a Mirror and Why It Resonated. BuzzFeed assembled 23 times. Jennifer Garner proved kindness is actually powerful as hell. But the fallout was more than just social media discourse and think pieces. Real consequences began manifesting almost immediately. The View's producers found themselves in emergency meetings with ABC executives, all trying to assess damage control options. Viewership data from the controversial episode showed massive spikes during the confrontation. Good for ratings in the short term, but potentially toxic for the show's brand long term. Advertisers started getting nervous. Several brands quietly requested their commercials not run during future View episodes featuring Joy until the situation stabilized. Sponsorship deals came under review. The calculus was simple. Jennifer Garner was beloved. Joy Behar was divisive. And brands didn't want to be associated with what was increasingly being framed as bullying behavior. By that afternoon, pressure had built to unsustainable levels. The View's PR team drafted and redrafted statements. Network executives weighed the cost of defending Joy against the cost of appearing to throw her under the bus. Behind the scenes, conversations grew heated about whether this was just another controversy that would blow over or a genuine turning point that required serious response. Eventually, a video statement appeared on The View's social media channels. Joy Behar, sitting in what appeared to be her dressing room, makeup less dramatic than usual, expression carefully controlled, addressed the camera. "I've been reading your comments. I've been watching the clips. I may have pushed too hard yesterday. Jennifer is a class act, and if I made it personal, that's on me." It wasn't quite an apology. There was no "I'm sorry," no acknowledgement of specifically what she'd done wrong, no commitment to do better. But it was as close as Joy Behar had ever come to admitting she'd been wrong. And for some viewers that was enough. For others, it was obvious damage control, a calculated response designed to stem bleeding ratings and advertiser flight rather than genuine remorse. The internet erupted again, this time debating whether the statement counted as adequate accountability. Half praised Joy for her humility in addressing the situation at all. Half called it insufficient corporate speak designed to protect her job rather than genuinely make amends. Meanwhile, Jennifer's response came not through official statements or video addresses, but through her Instagram story posted 18 hours after the confrontation. Simple white text on a black background. No photos, no videos, just words. "We're all human. We stumble, we react, we learn. Kindness always wins." It was quintessential Jennifer, gracious, even toward someone who'd attacked her, offering an off-ramp for Joy without explicitly forgiving or condemning, maintaining the moral high ground while refusing to keep the conflict alive. The post was screenshotted and shared more than 2 million times within the first day, becoming its own separate viral moment, proof that you could stand up for yourself and still choose grace. The confrontation became a defining moment not just for both women but for conversations about how we treat each other in public discourse. It was studied in media classes, discussed in psychology seminars, analyzed in countless YouTube videos and podcast episodes exploring what makes certain moments resonate while others fade. What made Jennifer's response so powerful wasn't anger or aggression. It was the combination of moral clarity and controlled delivery. The way she stood her ground without descending to Joy's level. The demonstration that you can be kind without being weak and gracious without being a doormat. "You hit a mirror" became shorthand for that perfect response to projection. That moment when someone trying to tear you down accidentally reveals their own insecurities. When cruelty gets reflected back on itself, not through matching cruelty, but through simple devastating truth. Months later, when Jennifer appeared on other shows and hosts inevitably asked about that moment, she always handled it with the same grace. Sometimes the universe gives you the microphone at the right time. You just have to decide what you'll do with it. And somewhere in her dressing room at The View, Joy Behar would occasionally watch those clips, sigh softly, and perhaps recognize that she'd learned something valuable that day. Underestimating someone because they choose kindness is a mistake that leaves you looking at your own reflection when they finally push back. What started as routine promotional interview became cultural moment, a reminder that grace isn't weakness, kindness isn't naivety, and sometimes the strongest response to cynicism is simply refusing to become cynical yourself. Even when cornered, even when attacked, even when every instinct screams to fight fire with fire. Jennifer Garner didn't plan to make headlines that day. She planned to promote a film. But when pushed past her limit, she did something far more valuable. She demonstrated what strength actually looks like when it refuses to sacrifice grace in the name of defending itself. And that mirrored Joy hit. It showed her exactly who she'd become and why millions of people celebrating Jennifer's response suggested maybe it was time to reflect on whether provocative entertainment should come at the cost of basic human decency.